Now, I had intended fully on coming on here this week and doing a 100% positive, no matter what, impact review. It was something I even tweeted to Dave Lagana that I was going to do, but there are reasons that I am backing away from that and am choosing not to do that. And I'll get to those in a moment or two. Now, here's one thing that I will say. I do wish that TNA would stop saying that they're giving away, like a Genesis in this case, for free on television. It's a free pay per view. It's kind of an oxymoron in and of itself, isn't it? A free pay per view? Those two words don't go along together at all. Furthermore, Spike TV is a cable television channel that is part of a subscription price that you pay to your cable or satellite provider in order to get that channel as part of a package of channels, what have you. So at no point in time ever could it technically, if we want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, technically be said that a show airing on cable television would be free to the viewing audience. You are still paying for it in some way, shape, or form. Now, what I don't like is when I see somebody sit there and try to put the positive spin on it. And frankly, if we were in the same position as somebody in TNA, we would try to put the most positive spin we could on it too. It's not good business traditionally to bash your own product and your own decisions. I get that. But the benefit for us, fortunately for us, we're not on the inside looking out, we're on the outside looking in. So we can say some things that maybe some of the people inside of the company might agree with, or it's a worst case scenario, are like, yeah, that makes sense. The bottom line is, we know, at least enough of us know, that the reason TNA, from the outside looking in, has stopped doing regular monthly pay per views, doing their old pay per view business model, is because the production costs were too much and they weren't doing enough buy rates to justify continuing to do things that way. And again, I get that. I understand that. At least TNA, I applaud them for getting to a point where their own bad business decisions and the environment that they have primarily created has made it that way. At least they didn't continue to try and go against the grain. They tried to do something different. They tried to do the one night only pay per views, do these gimmick pay per views for $15. And this was something at the time that seemed like a noble concept. But originally it was supposed to be that you were going to have the four big shows. And now you've got Genesis is free on TV, even though it's technically not free. Now, my thing is that if you're going to sit there and package this as a free pay per view, then to me, I would sit there and want to think that you would do something to actually make a person watching it feel like it's a pay per view quality product, that it is as close, excuse me, to being a pay per view as a pay per view could possibly be without being a pay per view, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It does to me in my own mind, at least. But when you have this Genesis show, and it is only 2 hours, when pay per views for wrestling are traditionally 3 hours, you're fighting an uphill battle to have it be feeling like anything other than a repackaged, renamed Impact. And that's a fact. Especially when you have several promo segments through the night. For any of us wrestling fans that have ever bought a wrestling company's pay per view in recent times, especially, how many times will you sit there and have multiple promo segments throughout the whole night, beginning, middle, and end, and sprinkled in throughout? That's a television show. That's not a pay per view. Now, what really aggravates me about TNA, with this week's Impact in particular, is I feel like they committed an ultimate sin of the business of professional wrestling, and an ultimate sin in the business world in general. And as far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely no positive spin that can really be put on this. The fact of the matter remains is when you advertise something, you had better damn well sure be able to follow through on it. Otherwise, it feels like a bait and switch. Otherwise, it feels like you hoodwinked, lied to, and swindled the people. And you might say, whoa, they were getting it for free anyways. What difference does it make? You would think for a TNA, who is trying desperately to stop a dwindling audience and actually grow their audience. Look at some of their recent live show attendance figures. and see some of the pictures that have circulated on the internet to see that this company is not in a good way. It's not in a good position. And you're going to sit there and build up to this Genesis show that was supposed to be 2 hours on Thursday night and say, oh, no, no, no. 2 of the featured attraction matches, Gunner and James Storm, no, we're going to have that next week. Kurt Angle versus Bobby Roode in a cage, we're going to have that next week. Now, what happens if you did have, and there are instances where this happens all the time, where you will have somebody that specifically tuned in for that one match or for that one match. You have now told them that you do not give 2 flying flips about what they want. You do not respect them enough as your fans, as your customers, in cases paying customers, to sit there and give them what you advertise, give them what you promoted. That is a horrible sin of business. That is not good on any level. It just isn't. You can't sit there and hype this up and be building towards this for weeks to sit there and say, oh, well, this match here and this match here that we told you was going to be this week, we're going to give you the old bait and switch and we're going to make you wait till next week. That's the type of crap that makes people riot on a Black Friday when they sit there and see this huge ad for something at a Best Buy or a Walmart and there are only 4 of them in stock. You just can't do that. And, this is TNA's own fault. Don't sit there and fill your show like the opening 6-man tag that came off of the heels of a promo where Sting is coming out of the crowd. Maybe you would have had room for Gunner and James Storm right there at the beginning of the show if you didn't have that crap. If you didn't have other promo segments during the night, maybe you would have had room to be able to fit Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode in there. These are 2 matches, 2 feuds that you had devoted a month, and in the case of Angle and Roode, a couple of months of time into. And to not build your shows around that, and to not actually follow through on what you promised your audience, is it any wonder, TNA, why you struggle to get 200 or 250 people to come to a high school gym to watch your live events? That's pathetic. Not even so much just the attendance figures, because those are pathetic in and of themselves, and I think everybody, even in that company, would have to agree with that and be honest with themselves and admit that. But to sit there and tell your audience that, you know what, we don't value you, and you're going to have to wait till next week is inexcusable. To sit there and then try to put a positive spin on it and say, well, Genesis is so action-packed and so loaded that we're going to have a part 2 next week, then why not just advertise it like that to begin with? Why not? Or here's an idea for some of the positive spin meisters that are going to say, well, to fit X number of storylines into it, they couldn't sit there and have it on a 2-hour show. Then why couldn't it be 3 hours like, I don't know, most of your standard wrestling pay-per-views would be? In that 3 hours of time, you would have definitely had room to add Gunner and James Storm. You definitely would have had room to add Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode and would have been none the worse for it. You're really telling me that Spike TV wouldn't have given you that 3rd hour? Really, TNA? Really, Dixie Carter? Really, Dave Lagana? Really, everybody involved with that operation at this point in time? I find it very hard to believe that Spike TV once every month wouldn't give you a 3rd hour for your program while we sit there and look at it sometimes from a WWE perspective of what that company's ratings are in relation to yours. You still do a solid cable television primetime rating for a network like Spike TV. Tell me you can't stretch that out to a 3rd hour. Tell me you didn't think it was important enough to stretch that out to a 3rd hour to actually not insult our intelligence as wrestling fans and make it actually feel more like a free pay-per-view, even though it just feels like a renamed, rebranded 2-hour Impact show. And not an incredibly good one. It's just inexcusable. You have Madison Rayne winning the Knockouts title. Whoopee. You have EC3 beating Sting. Cool. But then you're setting up to Magnus versus Sting next week, and Sting gets one more shot at the title before he leaves the company for whatever period and length of time. Just had to throw that stuff in there, didn't you? One last title shot for Sting. One last shot at glory. And all the while, TNA, you couldn't find a way to actually deliver upon what you promised your audience. That, to me, is the ultimate sin of business and is inexcusable. I had full intentions of sitting there and talking about the show in a 100% positive light this week. But to answer something that Dave Lagana said to me before, approach it from a positive perspective. There is no positive perspective here. You lied to your audience. You lied and deceived your customers. There's nothing positive to say about that. Even if you felt the show was good, even if you felt it was not, to sit there and say, well, we had to stretch it out to a second week, that makes it seem like you had no plan going in. Why not just make the show 3 hours one time? Or maybe cut out some of the filler crap. Just throwing it out there. Did you really need to have that opening 6-man tag? Did you really need to have it? Or whatever hell many people it was tag? Was it 12-man tag, excuse me? Did you really need to have that? Did you really need to have Sting walking out from the crowd? Did you really need to have that? That's what I wonder. You know what we really needed to have, TNA, as your audience this week? The advertised card and show that you promised to deliver to us this past Thursday. And you failed to do that. And this is the thing here of, you get tired sometimes of having to pick on a company for this and pointing this shit out. And then people within TNA will sit there and say, oh, that was negative, or you don't know. No, this is one of these cases where, as a customer who has bought your pay-per-views in the past, has bought your merch in the past, that consistently provides you with whatever in terms of a television rating, actually gives you eyeballs, talks about your product. I mean, you think about it, with my standard Impact review, I get 8 to 10 times more people watching my review than seem to go to an average TNA house show. But then you're going to sit there and slap me in the face like that, saying, no, you know what? I'm not going to give you Kurt Angle versus Bobby Roode this week. You're going to have to wait till next week. We're going to try and milk this again. No, we're not going to give you Gunner and James Storm. We're going to make you wait until next week. I saw that the viewership numbers and ratings were not all that particularly great for this week's Impact. Good. They fucking deserve it. And I hope the numbers are even worse for next week's show, this week's show, Thursday, whatever the hell. Because TNA deserves it. If this company someday dies a very fast and swift death, they will have nobody to blame but themselves, and ultimately, they would have deserved it. And that is the real tragedy here. When you get to the point with all the other stuff and all the other crap that we're expected to sit through as fans, and all the other ways that Impact Wrestling, TNA, insult our intelligence, to me, the one thing you cannot do is lie to your audience and not give them what you promised to deliver them, especially without a real justification or reason, just for the shit all of it. That's no good. For those of you that were expecting a 100% positive Impact review this week and in-depth analysis of the entire show, sorry, but I'm mirroring TNA on this one. If they don't have to sit there and give you what they promoted and promised, then I, a lot of times, will mirror what the bigger company does, whether it be TNA or WWE. I'm not going to give you what I advertised or promised. And in this case, I have a specific reason, and that is because it's TNA's fault. They made me not want to do a positive review of the show this week because of what they did. Shame on everybody involved at that company. I hope this Thursday's Impact draws 500,000 viewers on television because, like I said, you would have fucking deserved it.